It's baffled scholars for 2 millennia. It is a puzzle made of multi-dimensional elements, an enigma with roots that reach back to the dawning of time, perhaps before. Daniel explained part of it. Ezekiel and Isaiah had glimpses into it. John saw it all for the time of the end. That time is now. Join Derek and Sharon Gilbert on a journey that spans the course of history, from Eden to Mount Hermon, from Hermon to Babel, from Babel to Rome, from Rome to the cross, and from there to us. Biblical prophecy is coming true before your eyes, and to understand it, you must discern the times both then and now. It's time to unravel the threads of this all-encompassing prophetic paradox. It's time to unravel Revelation. Welcome to Unraveling Revelation. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and you may notice that we are wearing lav mics this time. It's an experiment. We'll see how it goes.
Trying some different audio to see if we can find a way that is a little more convenient than having to try to, fit them around the ears and make sure they don't flop around. And
I have a really weirdly shaped head. It's tiny, and even Joe Horn, who's really good at fitting those earpiece mics, goes, I don't know. What's wrong with your head?
Short of using tape, which is, duct tape fixes most everything, but it's
We've been
not
known
really,
to do that.
not really comfortable from
No.
that stamp. So anyway, if it sounds a little different this week, that's why we're using different microphones. But we pray that all comes through and the information is useful to you. If you would take a moment, if you're watching this on YouTube especially, and God bless you if you are, please subscribe and share, but then download our free app to guarantee that we never get canceled, because we will not be canceled from our app.
Amen to that. And activate the notifications for that app, because not only will you find out when we release a new program, and there are lots of them on the app, but you will also find out when there are prayer requests and other questions in the conversation area of the app.
Yeah, it's a very powerful app, and we are really thankful and grateful to the developer Subsplash, which does a number of apps for churches and ministries. So please take advantage of it. You'll find it at our website or at our main web hub, which is gilberthouse.org/app.
Well, last week we said that we were going to begin with 7 Kings, but some things have happened during this week, and we're recording this several weeks before you're watching this. So if you're thinking, well, that didn't just happen, it did for us. We're in the past. You're in the future.
Time shifting and trying to bring some of the news of the day into this discussion. Now, we try not to view the headlines with the idea that everything is the fulfillment of prophecy, but there are certain trends and events that I think feeding into trends that will ultimately lead to the one world government of the Antichrist.
Exactly. Well, the G20 just met without Russia, without China.
So, yes.
And it was in India. India is a big player on all sides.
Right. India is almost, I think, like Turkey, like Erdogan of Turkey. Modi, the Prime Minister of India, has realized that because of the position that he's in between East and West, that he can use India as, that he can use that location, that status for his own advantage. And he is a very nationalistic leader. In fact, you may have noticed if you watched any of the video from the G20 that his name placard on the desk in front of him did not identify his country as India, but identified it as Bharat, which is the Hindu name for India. He has very much been promoting a Hindu nationalist agenda, which is very popular with many of the people in India.
And because of that, there are regions in India that are primarily Jainist or Christian. And because of that, they are being persecuted and in some cases killed.
Muslim too.
Yes, the Muslims as well.
Yeah.
As the Buddhists. I mean, there are a lot of different religions in India, and Hinduism is taking over.
Right. Now, we and the West don't have a strong, and neither do we, have a deep understanding of the Hindu religion, but it is not it is not necessarily a peaceful religion, especially as some of the more militant practitioners of Hinduism make clear, and certainly there are some deities in
the Hindu religions such as Kali that are very, very bloody. In fact, Kali is probably another manifestation of the entity we've been talking about, the Great Prostitute, Inanna, or Ishtar.
Exactly, which is one reason I wanted to bring this up during this episode, because of the G20 and because India has been, or Bharat, has been so central to the current G20 and what's going on with the economic treaties that are taking place. Many of you are probably aware of China's Belt and Road program, which is essentially building a new Silk Road to encompass the earth. There is now a Western version of that Joe Biden was touting big time at the G20, bragging about how shipping lanes and train tracks are going to be created to connect India to the rest of the world.
Yeah, this is a counter move to the Belt and Road Initiative that was announced at the G20. It's being reported by some of the corporate media here in the West that China was blindsided by this. I seriously doubt that. China has got eyes everywhere. We have talked in other places about the 1,000 Talents plan, in which academics around the world are basically recruited into the Chinese government-controlled economic and academic system.
There's something called elite capture.
Elite capture.
And it can be academics, but it can also be politicians.
Right, yes, where politicians are lured or seduced, and I mean that in a couple of different ways, blackmailed into giving up information that the Chinese government finds very useful. So I doubt the Chinese were taken by surprise by this. It's just that they are so much further ahead in developing the Belt and Road that this, what they're calling this India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, or IMEC, caught the Chinese by surprise. And again, India is playing both sides because India is a key member of BRICS, which is the economic group that was founded by Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and in January will include new nations, including Saudi Arabia, Argentina, Egypt, and may well include at some future date Nigeria, which between the Nigerians and the Saudis and the Russians control the lion's share of the world's petroleum.
Now, the South African, sorry, not South African, but the African Union was just added as a permanent member to the G20.
Yeah.
Therefore, the G20 plan is to also include Africa. Well, China's been in Africa for a long time, creating ports and other infrastructure, sort of with a lure of, we'll build it for you, Mr. King or Mr. Premier or Prime Minister or President. We will build it for you, and then you can pay us back. But of course, these poor nations cannot afford to pay China back these billions of dollars, and therefore China now owns that infrastructure. They're all over Africa. And speaking of Africa, West Africa has been exploding with various coups. And look, there are Western nations over there, too, that are involved in these coups, Joe. So don't think that it's only China and Russia that are playing games.
Yeah.
Inanna is using all nations to build her infrastructure, her beast system.
The colonial era never really ended. It's just the players are changing somewhat. The most recent coup in West Africa is in the country of Niger, which it borders on Nigeria and a number of others. But there are a couple of other countries there, Mali and Burkina Faso, that also recently had coups. Gabon is another. We also see a struggle for power in Sudan. And interestingly enough, in all of these nations, Russians connected to either the Russian military directly or the Wagner group, the mercenary group headed by the ostensibly late, Yevgeny Prigozhin, were known to have visited those nations just before things flipped. Now, West Africa is interesting because, like Libya, it was part of the Francophile area that had originally been colonized by the French. And so the French still have a presence in Niger, as do we. We've got about 1,000 soldiers, the United States that is, in Niger.
We have quite a number of bases in West Africa and throughout Africa. Some of these bases are drone bases, and some of them have been downplayed as though they're not very important and they're temporary, when in fact a recent report came out denying that.
Yeah, In fact, The Intercept, which is an investigative news site founded by Glenn Greenwald, who then got kicked out because he wasn't woke enough. That said, The Intercept still does some good investigative journalism. And they found that the Pentagon misled the U.S. Congress about the U.S. bases in Africa, downplaying, as you say, one of the bases, especially in Niger, where we've got a drone base, which has cost the United States about $250 million since 2016. It was downplayed as sort of a minimal, low cost, small footprint. It turns out it's actually a pretty important drone hub for launching strikes against Islamic terrorists, or at least that's what was presented to Congress.
Now, while we're talking about drones, I want to mention something called the Replicator program that DARPA is working on, along with IARPA, which is their information and sort of IT division of DARPA. These will be relatively cheap to produce so that you can go into a region, a theater of war, and release thousands and thousands of drones to hit thousands of targets simultaneously. This is this is all part of the beast system. It isn't just economic. This is also warfare.
Yeah.
This is the industrial complex, the military industrial complex on steroids.
There are a number of programs that have been developed along these lines. It's essentially launching a drone that then spawns other drones.
The turducken drone, seriously, is how it was described in one report. So the turducken, of course, is a duck within
a turkey, a chicken inside
of a duck inside of a turkey.
Right.
Yes, sort of like Russian dolls. So it's a plane that delivers a drone that has a payload inside of it that has a payload inside of it. So that's one way that you can release thousands of drones into one theater of war.
Overwhelming the defenses of the enemy.
Overwhelming them. I mean, if you've got anti-missile systems that don't know where to shoot, even the ones that have multiple warheads on them, they can't take them all down.
Right.
And if you have enough of a payload on the smallest ones, then you can really affect an entire region. You can take it down. This is part of the beast system. Inanna is not only a sex goddess, she's not only a goddess of war, she's also working with Nabu, the Mercury, if you want to call him that. He's got a lot of different names to create this beast system that's also economic. So we are seeing this built before our very eyes.
And that economic system also includes surveillance, because it will not only, in order to build this system, the mark of the beast requires a system that can cut you out of the economy, prevent you from buying and selling if you don't take the mark and worship the beast. How can you do that unless you control the means of exchange? And this is all part of that. The U.S. Navy, by the way, working on a system they literally call Locust, a system, a drone swarm called Locust.
Oh my goodness.
Just this week, as we're recording this, the Daily Star in the UK reporting about a new system proposed by the police in the UK that would allow them to launch drones from boxes on the tops of buildings, so that if something were to happen in a certain neighborhood, they would activate their surveillance and apprehension drones, perhaps, or neutralization drones, that could launch from a building, find a target, neutralize it, and then return to its base to recharge. This is really Orwellian.
Do you think they'd actually take out shoplifters?
Probably not. Not here in the U.S.
But it is. You're right. It's Orwellian. We are moving into a dystopian world without having to go through an apocalyptic event. We are very quickly moving into the total information awareness world.
Right.
Remember that?
That goes back, well, gosh, that goes back to just the post 9/11 world. And as we're recording this on 9/11, it's very, very apropos. We'll talk a little bit more about the panopticon and how they're trying to develop a panopticon that is global, and how that will fit into an economic system when Unraveling Revelation continues. Jesus declared that the gates of hell would not prevail against his church. But humans have tried to contact fallen angels on the other side of those gates since the Stone Age, and they're still trying today. Arm yourself with information. During January, our special offer features our new books, The Gates of Hell and Destination Earth, co-authored with Donna Howell and Allie Anderson. Find out where Jesus was baptized, why it wasn't where most people think, and why it was a declaration of war against the fallen realm. How the belief in ancient aliens is based on the New Age and occult teachings of Madame Blavatsky and Aleister Crowley, and how Hollywood has effectively spread the ET gospel. Our 2 new books, plus the DVDs What Lies Beneath, about the world's oldest temple, Göbekli Tepe, and the 13-part teaching DVD based on the second coming of Saturn. This is a $99 value, but during January, it's just $45 plus shipping and handling. Only at gilberthouse.org/store. Welcome back to Unraveling Revelation. I'm Derek Gilbert.
That would make me Sharon Gilbert, and we're so glad that you choose to join us every week because we love producing these programs. We are curious about the Lord. We are curious about His Word. We love digging in and trying to figure out how it was understood at the time that these scriptures were written. And of course, many of the things that John saw were very difficult to explain. However, as we near that moment where it is fulfilled, we're beginning to understand it. So thank you for joining us. If you want to see some of these things up close and personal in Israel, you can join us next March the 31st, I think is when the tour group leaves, through April 9th.
And then there's an optional 3-day extension to Jordan, which you'll want to take because that'll take you to Petra, the Red Desert of Wadi Rum, and Mount Nebo, where Moses got his only look at the Holy Land. But from there, you'll see a very significant location, both historically and prophetically. The plains of Moab, which is what Ezekiel describes or calls the Valley of the Travelers, which is where he places the end of the war of Gog and Magog, which we believe is the war of Armageddon. So you can find out more online and reserve your place at gilbertsinisrael.com, gilbertsinisrael.com. Yes.
If you're watching this in the future and all of this is past, go to gilbertsinisrael.com anyway, because we're going to try to go to Israel every spring, so long as the Lord keeps us able to go.
Amen. Amen. Well, the economic system of the beast is going to require surveillance, as we said, and this will not necessarily be accomplished by drones, but certainly by an electronic currency, digital currency. We have been looking at blockchain technology for some time now.
A long time.
Full disclosure, we don't own any cryptocurrency, don't plan to.
No.
There are problems with fiat currency. The United States dollar is only backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government.
But I would argue that fiat, that Bitcoin is also, and others, they're also fiat because they're backed only by your trust in them.
Well, that's true. That's true. And you don't even have anything physical like a piece of paper to document that it's only what's on your screen in your digital wallet. Now, the one advantage that Bitcoin and other decentralized cryptocurrencies like it have is that they are decentralized. It's not under the control of any single corporation or government agency. So when you look at blockchain, the technology, as it's controlled by Bitcoin, Bitcoin is not the mark of the beast, but the technology, blockchain technology, will be deployed by central banks. There are more than 50 central banks around the world that are either testing or have already introduced central bank digital currencies. Learn the acronym CBDC, Central Bank Digital Currency, because it will become more and more important to you in the years ahead. The federal government has rolled out a test program called FedNow. Now, this is not a central bank digital currency. It is a reconciliation system, a means of payment processing that's supposed to be instantaneous, which allows member banks to immediately reconcile transfers of money from one bank to another, whether it's by debit card or check or whatever. But but it is using the same technology, and the Fed is testing a CBDC, as
They
is
are
the
indeed.
Bank of Europe, the Bank of England, the Japanese Central Bank, the Chinese Central Bank. Again, all of the big players are testing out a central bank digital currency. Why is this important? Because being digital, it can be programmed to only operate within certain areas. They can use a technique called geofencing to only allow you to use it within a certain geographic area. If you're outside the boundaries of your 15-minute city,
Yes,
it won't work.
exactly. You've left your safe zone. We can't guarantee your safety out here, so please go back in or we won't allow you to buy and sell.
Or if you're trying to buy something that is not allowed, for example, religious literature, like a
Yes.
Bible, perhaps.
Or wait, perhaps you aren't opted into the system.
Oh,
You can't buy and sell. We feel terrible
your
about it, Mr.
social credit
Your
score is just
social-
too low to allow.
Sorry, you keep acting like a Christian. We've told you that that is an illegal activity. That day is coming.
Right.
And we are now seeing a move towards a cashless society, which means that you would only have the option of opting into the digital currency system, the beast system that is being built. I don't think that every human involved in this is aware of what's going on spiritually. I really don't.
No.
But if you pray for the people at the top, if you pray for our leaders, which we are told to do in scriptures, please do that, because you never know what a difference you might make. It may actually help to delay the onset of what is definitely going to happen, because God has said it would.
Yeah. So just to kind of summarize as briefly as we can where
No
we are with
such
this.
thing.
Yeah. We believe that there is an entity, an ancient entity known to the Sumerians as Inanna, to the Akkadians and Babylonians as Ishtar, Astarte in the Bible, Aphrodite, Venus, many other names, probably aspects of her worshipped as Magnus Mater, the Great Mother, or
Yes.
perhaps Diana, certainly the great temple of Artemis. Artemis, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world at Ephesus, where Paul ran into such trouble for preaching against her and disrupting the business of the silversmiths. She, as Sharon said, was the ancient goddess of gender fluid, carnal sexuality, and mindless violence.
Yes.
In her aspect among the Canaanites, the war goddess Anat and the war god Athtar, extremely bloody. Anat described as wearing a girdle made of human skulls. She, we believe, is the entity who rides the beast in Revelation. The beast, we believe, as the entity that comes out of the sea in Revelation 12, or Revelation 13 rather, described in the same way as the ancient Mesopotamian chaos dragon Tiamat, or Yam for the Canaanites, Leviathan in the Bible. We think that the spirit of chaos is what she is riding, and certainly we see chaos on our streets, just manifesting all over the place. As here in the United States, we've essentially legalized shoplifting in our major cities.
Yes, sadly we have, which means that you and I, we all pay bigger prices
Right.
at the stores because they want to make the money. By the way, speaking of having been around for a long, long time, a recent archaeological discovery, and as you're watching this, by the way, Derek and I are just returning from the archaeological conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we probably will learn all sorts of things, and have learned that you can't know about yet, because they
Embargoed.
always say, I'm sorry, this is embargoed until it's actually peer reviewed. But there was a mask discovered in what's called Huarca.
The ancient city of Uruk.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
the city of Nimrod.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And they think that this is a representation of the ancient goddess, Inanna.
Yeah. This is just a testimony to how ancient she is, the worship is of her cult. And we believe that the modern belief that, if you try to argue that men can't menstruate, you can be canceled from social media, or,
But that's an Inanna thing.
it
She's
really
very
is.
much gender fluid.
It really is.
And that shows in her love of warfare, that she has a masculine thirst for blood.
Right.
She truly is riding a beast. And by the way, the beast system, I was looking this up this morning because you and I often take a look at what's called circumambulation. trust me, this all has to do with where we are in Revelation 17. Circumambulation is walking around in circles around an object in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost always done in a counterclockwise, or you would say in Europe, an anti-clockwise motion. If you look at the oldest and nearly all representations of the Ouroboros, which is a dragon, it's a serpent eating its own tail, but it is a dragon, it is counterclockwise. It's moving counterclockwise.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we learned during our recent expedition to Israel, the site of Gilgal Rephaim, which is at least 6,000 years old, according to Dr. Mike Freakman, it's probable that that too was used for counterclockwise circling in rituals around the central point. And in fact, a friend of ours, John Fryer, John, if you're watching, thank you for sending this today, sent an overhead view of the park.
In St. Louis?
In St. Louis, around the St. Louis Gateway Arch. And at the western edge of that park, facing the Public Courts building, which is a building that's about 90 years old with a ziggurat on top and two griffins, which look like cherubim. The end of that park is a circumpunct, which again is that same symbol, the circle around the central point.
Yes, representing a goddess also, it's thought. But yes, it's the idea of going around a central point. This is going on as Derek and I record this in India. It's a festival over there where the men dress up as goddesses and as gods. And very often the worshipers will walk around a central shrine. And they do it clockwise, I think. But if you live in India and you know more about this, this particular, it's spelled Theyyam when it's translated into English. Thayam or Tevam. I'm not really sure how it is pronounced. Forgive me. I don't really pronounce Hindi very well at all, but it's a festival where the ancient gods and goddesses, it's a form of the ancient ancestor worship. And again, these masks that are worn are elaborate, and the men pretend to be women.
Yeah. Well, again, another manifestation of this ancient cult inspired by this entity that we believe is the one who rides the beast in Revelation, who has partnered with other entities. You mentioned Nabu, Hermes, Mercury, who is the god of commerce and trade, perhaps other entities whose expertise is in being all-seeing eyes, the so-called panopticon. It's interesting that one of the systems being proposed by the United States military is called Argus. U.S. Special Operations Command.
There was a god with 100 eyes.
A god with 100 eyes, yes. The Argus system being proposed by the U.S. Special Operations Command to track what we're doing on social media. Of course, since they can't do that legally, posse comitatus, they're funding the research for a private company to develop it and then roll it out to big tech companies. So, yeah, the system is being put in place. The electronic tools that we take advantage of each day because they make lives more convenient and secure, we think, will ultimately be turned against us someday. But when we see all these things, remember,
look up.
Yeah, redemption draws near. Thank you for watching. This is Unraveling Revelation.
Unraveling Revelation is a viewer-supported outreach of Gilbert House Ministries. Follow us online at unravelingrevelation.tv and gilberthouse.org. That's where you'll find our weekly Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship. Join us as we study the Bible every week, verse by verse, in chronological order. We'd love to hear from you. Contact us through our websites or drop us a line at P.O. Box 78, Crane, Missouri 65633.